Well, the presents have been unwrapped, the champagne has been drunk, the trees have been taken down. Actually, that's a lie, our tree is still up, but that's just because we're lazy, okay? The holiday season is officially over, folks. And looking back on 2022, if I'm being completely honest, one of the main things I'm gonna remember is what a great year this was for horror movies. The last couple of years, I've really just not been that impressed with the new horror releases. Obviously, the industry slowed down a lot due to the pandemic, and I think a lot of the new projects that were coming out were necessarily a lot more subdued and smaller in scale. But 2022 was the year where the movie landscape really felt like it was returning to normal. I got to see a lot of these movies in theaters, which was amazing. I didn't realize how much I'd missed that. And overall, I just thought a lot of these movies had like a spectacle and a pizzazz that wasn't really present the last couple of years. So without further ado, let's dive in. The top 10 horror movies of 2022. Let's go! Alright, coming in at number 10 is Chloe Okuno's feature debut, Watcher. Starring the seasoned scream queen Micah Monroe, Watcher is the story of a young American woman who moves to Romania and becomes convinced that the local serial killer at large is actually the man who she often sees watching her from his window across the street. Watcher has the feel of a really classic suspense film. It's not subtle in its homages to Hitchcock and Polanski, and the direction here is just really tight and focused. It's only an hour and a half long, so even though I didn't feel like this was as memorable and lasting as a lot of movies on this list, it's definitely a solid entry to the girl gets scared looking out her window subgenre, and it's absolutely worth your time. Number 9 on my list is Bodies, 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 a Gen Z murder mystery with a standout cast and crisp writing. In my video on this movie, I described it as Agatha Christie meets Ready or Not. The plot is full of surprises, tons of twists and turns, especially a particularly delightful one at the end that I really did not see coming. The characters can be a bit grating, but they're meant to be that way. This is a biting social commentary, as well as just a really exciting, fun movie that doesn't really have a dull moment. This movie's actually even grown on me since I did my video about it. I just feel like it's got enough violence and style and excitement to make the whodunit genre fresh for a whole new generation. Coming in at number 8 is a lesser-known release from the beginning of the year called No Exit. No Exit is a one-location thriller about a woman who gets stranded during a snowstorm with a group of people she doesn't know, but when a kidnapped child is discovered in a van outside, a game of cat and mouse ensues to determine which of them is actually the kidnapper slash bad guy. For me, this one was all about the atmosphere. I actually don't remember a lot of the plot details quite as well as I'd like, but it's really just the feeling overall that has stuck with me, as well as a couple moments near the end that I feel, I won't spoil, yeah, they nailed it. Now, people might be surprised at my number 7 movie on this list. It seems to be showing up at or near the top of most other year-end lists that I've seen, and for good reason. Nope is the third feature film from director Jordan Peele, who burst onto the horror scene in 2017 with the smash hit Get Out. Now, the less said about Nope going in, the better, in my view. Daniel Kaluuya returns to collaborate with Peele. Keke Palmer plays his sister, and the two of them start to notice some strange things happening near their family's horse ranch. This movie is a total spectacle visually, especially in the final act. This is a big budget, big idea horror movie. There are also a couple of flashback sequences involving a chimpanzee that are among the scariest, freakiest things I saw in a movie all year. Jordan Peele already has so much mastery over his craft. That being said, this is about 20 minutes too long, and at times I felt like it was more a collection of just like interesting ideas rather than like a fully formed, coherent story, which is why it's not higher on my own personal list. But ultimately, I'm going to say that Nope is not only worth the time you spend watching it, but it's also worth all the time after the movie that you're going to spend thinking about it as well. All right, now this is the point of my list where we start getting into some really heavy hitters. Any one of these next 6 movies would have been the top-ranked horror movie on my list from 2020 or my list from 2021. And we'll start, of course, with number 6, a Danish horror film called Speak No Evil. Speak No Evil is the absolutely harrowing story of a family who meets another family on vacation and accepts an invite to stay at that other family's home. This movie starts out as like an uncomfortable social commentary, sort of like an especially cringe-inducing episode of The Office or something, but it slowly begins to morph into something else entirely. There are scenes in Speak No Evil that will simply just never leave your brain. There's one in particular that if you have children, or maybe you will someday have children, or maybe you even just like some children a little bit, this might not be the movie for you. Speak No Evil is fucking brutal. This is definitely the movie on this list I would be most hesitant to recommend to someone that I know, that I have to interact with personally. I myself am not rushing to watch it again anytime soon. That being said, it is brilliant and thought-provoking and just a total powerhouse of a movie. Number 5 on this list came out earlier in the year, and if you had told me after I saw it that it would end up being passed by 4 more releases from this year, I simply would not have believed you. I'm talking about X, Ty West's brutal and brilliant slasher, starring Mia Goth both as a young, starry-eyed pornographic actress, as well as the creepy old woman who owns the farm that she and her friends are staying at. X is simultaneously a throwback to slasher classics, but also something that is totally novel in its own right. This movie is everything I wanted from a theatrical experience. It's funny and action-packed and stylish and subversive, and I honestly just walked away from the theater with a huge smile stapled on my face. Coming in at number 4 is Barbarian. This is probably the most fun horror movie of the year. Barbarian is another movie that you really should go into as blind as possible. The basic setup is a woman shows up to her Airbnb only to find that it's been double booked and a man is already staying there. Is it a meet cute or a violent slasher or something else entirely? Well, if you're a horror fan and you somehow haven't seen Barbarian yet, I'd recommend finding out the answer to that question immediately. The performances in this movie are great. Justin Long is at the absolute peak of his comedic powers here. Barbarian is it's a wild ride. Make it a priority. X and Barbarian are both movies that I would describe as crowd pleasers, right? They've objectively just got probably more mass appeal than the other movies on this list. These next 3 movies, the final 3 movies on my list, may not have quite as broad an appeal as those 2, but they certainly knocked my block off. Number 3 on my list is Pearl, a prequel movie that examines the character and upbringing of the old woman from X. Now, the end credits for X actually teased this film and revealed that it would be, quote, coming soon, but given that it only came out a few months later, I think it's fairly surprising just how soon. Now, Pearl is not quite the horror extravaganza that X was. I'd personally classify it maybe more as a horror-tinged character study in a lot of ways, but it's catapulted up to the 3rd spot on this list by an absolutely mind-blowing performance from Mia Goth. No exaggeration, this is the best performance I saw in a movie this year. If the Oscars actually cared about horror movies, Mia Goth would be nominated for Best Actress, and she honestly might win. And to make things even better, Goth and Ty West are teaming up again shortly to bring us a 3rd movie in this saga. Something tells me it might end up on my next year-end list. Coming in with a very strong silver medal, number 2 on my list is Scott Derrickson's The Black Phone. The Black Phone is about a young boy who becomes the latest victim of a neighborhood kidnapper named the Grabber, but soon discovers that help may be available from an unexpected source. This is based on a story written by Stephen King's son, Joe Hill, and the kid's a chip off the old block, right? The King influences here are undeniable in all the best ways. There are a couple really standout performances in this one too, but obviously the one to single out here is Ethan Hawke. The dude's just having the time of his life. He makes a surprisingly menacing villain. And yeah, I just thought this movie was delightful from start to finish. For a long time, I thought it was going to be my favorite horror movie of the year. But that was before I saw dun dun dun! Okay, sorry, I actually need to give a bit of preamble to this movie because its inclusion here may be controversial. I actually didn't even make a review video of it because I'm not totally sure it should be classified as a horror movie. However, Google calls it a horror thriller, Wikipedia calls it a comedy horror, and IMDb calls it a comedy horror thriller. So, the authorities have spoken. My favorite horror movie of 2022 is The Menu. The Menu stars Anya Taylor-Joy as a woman who finds herself at an exclusive fine dining experience only to discover that it's a little bit more than it seems. Ralph Fiennes is brilliant as always as the chef of this establishment. Really, everything in this movie just feels like it was tailor-made for me. I went in knowing I'd like this movie. I'd seen the trailer before and it looked awesome, but this movie lived up to all of my expectations and then some. The Menu not only tops this list of horror movies, but it's actually my favorite movie, period, from the whole year. Anyway, that about does it. 2022. An incredible year for horror movies. I'm just going to go ahead and give the whole year 5 stars out of 5. We'll see you back here in 2023 for book reviews, movie reviews, some more Stephen King talk. Stay tuned on the writing front because I'm going to pick that back up as well, fingers crossed. And as always, thank you for watching my video, and here's hoping you survive to see the next one.